Hello everyone. Welcome to Tales of Recovery. I'm Grace Alves, your host, and that cafe retreat is coming up soon. So I have been getting a lot of people asking me questions and comments about, first of all, why are you doing a death retreat? Number two, that sounds brutal. That sounds so intense. And so I'm going to tell you my story about death and Death Cafe, and hopefully try to I guess submit this message that really what it means is learning how to live in the present moment. And we're not really living in the present moment currently. And there's so much hustle and so much anxiety and so much stress. And we've been really disconnected as a society, as a culture, from the earth, from our bodies, from our ancestral way in the day, hundreds and thousands of years ago. So it really has been affecting us. We're one of the most diseased cultures in the world, countries, and I mean, I think in general, there's just we're so not well, unwell. And one of the reasons that, besides being disconnected, is really, I think, this fear of confronting the reality that maybe I'm addicted to something, the reality that maybe I'm sick, the reality that such and such person is going to die one day, or that I'm going to die one day. And so we continue to avoid. Of course, death is such a huge impactful thing that it's hard to come and talk about it when you can't even handle that you're working your way into debt because you keep shopping your way to feeling better, or that you are hooked onto a substance, or just haven't done any therapy in your life. And I mean, everybody needs to go to therapy. That's just how it is. If you've never been, well, you might as well call someone right now, because if you think that therapy is not necessary, then I think that's one of the problems to begin with. We have so many options and so many solutions now, or practices, to help assist us in really returning back to our bodies in the present moment, and to continue to seek this, hopefully, this opportunity really to breathe a little bit deeper, and to allow ourselves to be okay with, like Gabor says, disillusionment, Gabor Mate, or a lot of my Buddhist teachers, just the impermanence and the constant change of things that is the 100% thing that we can actually rely on. Things are going to change. There is no certainty. There is no, well, God willing, or whatever the religion says, or, well, this is my path. There's always things that can, that are inside of our bodies, of our intuition, that we know might be better for us, but we don't do them because of programming. We don't go to therapy because the programming says, well, only crazy people go. We don't step out of the cult of family or religion because then we have this sensation that, well, then I'm not going to be invited. I won't be able to go here anymore, which isn't always a bad thing. The most of the crazy people out there are the most free and liberated, because they're not anymore conforming to what these society standards of the shoulds and how things need to be are, because they don't need to be any particular way. If we have an awareness, a consciousness about our own health, our own well-being, our own responsibility for our sovereignty, that is going to expand into whoever you're contacting with, into other people, into society, into your kids, into whatever. And we have choices now, honestly, that maybe people didn't have 50 years ago, 10 years ago, 100 years ago. The choices, at least, I guess, in my, we're worse around it, to actually, you have that choice in your mind anywhere. Even Nelson Mandela, who was in jail for years, he still had a choice. They didn't take, his spirit, his soul, his mind power to just be, working hard at not allowing anybody else to crush your spirit. And so one of the things that we work at in these death workshops is sitting with this reality that we have been sold this lie about, you must always be young forever and never, and it's just always positive and always good and make a lot of money and have all these, you know, beauty treatments and do whatever you can to live forever and be a rock star. And when we're not doing that, we feel like such failures. And it's the question for me is, who benefits from me thinking that I need to live until 100 looking like I'm 20, or like or have Madonna's body when I'm 53, and that there's certain lifestyles that I have to be having in order to be, meeting these expectations, these standards. Everybody's life is fucked up. Everybody's trying to do the best they can. And when we go in to think about what will I be doing on my deathbed, and that is if we even get a chance to be in a deathbed, because some truck can come by and just run me over tomorrow, or an unexpected diagnose can take it away from me way sooner than I thought. So there's so many different, and what do we typically do? We go to the doctor freaking out for the yearly exam. Oh my God, I hope they don't find anything. I hope there's no fucking tumors. I hope the blood work's okay. And then you go on to live another year of unconscious living, eating McDonald's, drinking the Kool-Aid, doing whatever things aren't really good for your body, because your body gets used to feeling this way and you forget that you can actually feel better. And so that's, it's a complex issue. It's not just showing up to Death Cafe or a death retreat thinking, oh God, if I go there, because here's where the superstition comes in, right? I don't want to talk about that because then for sure it's coming. I don't want to read about death because then, oh, I'm calling it in. Let me tell you, it's coming. It happens every day. Every day we have small losses. Every day, certain things since you're born, you're on your way to dying. We have this experience here, and part of allowing ourselves to be, held in this experience without so much struggle, which I guess struggle is just part of the way, right? One of the noble truths is just there's going to be suffering. That's the first one, actually. But we don't have to stay in the suffering. You can learn to observe it and kind of come to terms with the fact that life is hard. It is what it is. But how can we expand into, maybe kind of like what Nelson Mandela did, is just to, even when you're in this prison or in this horrible job that you hate, or in these relationships that are fucking killing you, that you can practice going inside of your body and going to therapy and going to coaches and going to these sessions where you can begin to figure out that you're not a victim. A long time ago when I started in these meetings when I was like 25, 26, and I would go to all these meetings and 12-step meetings, one of the speakers once came up and said to me, you're not a victim, you are a volunteer. And I think I probably should have tattooed that on myself, because I constantly forget it. I am not a victim. I am volunteering to be this victim and blaming everybody. It's, it's this happened to me, that happened to me. And when you begin to own your responsibility of my part in it, and my, I guess, even my enjoying, being this victim, or my enjoying being like, oh, this all happened to me and poor little me, and it's because I'm a woman, it's because I'm Mexican, it's because this, it's because that. And eventually, it's part of the journey, I guess, to be angry and to think that somebody else did this to you. And yes, our adults, our elders had a lot to do with it, because they themselves have been robbed of these earth-based, old school, natural ways, of these like ancient traditions and ancient ways of being connected to earth, connected to the elements, connected to our bodies, connected to spirit. We're all just now working in computers, trying to make money, seeing how much we can invest so that I can have a good retirement, and going from event to event and from sport to sport, and getting our kids all hustled up so they can be the best and we can be the winners. Parent of the Year award. And, when something hits you really intensely, like boom, when I don't even remember how old I was, but the first person that died that I was somewhat close to age when was, this friend of ours in Tijuana, and she was young. You sit there, you look at the coffin, you go to the burial, and you're like, there's two ways to think about it, right? Most of us think, oh shit, thank God it wasn't me. Oh, thank Goddess and all everybody that it wasn't my kid or my brother or me. The other way to think about it is, it was her time. Either way, it's horrible, right? It's such a crush to the heart, to the nervous system, this computer body that we live in, because the loss is intense and we are sentient beings, and feeling is really, really hard to do. And so that was the first time that I realized, I mean, I think I'd realized it before, even being really young, I was always kind of scared about going to bed thinking, this thing is going to end, and then what's going to happen, because this is going to go on and on and on. And once I'm dead, therapy, compassionate inquiry therapist that I work with a couple times, she's great, told me that that's called the fear of non-existence. Well, yeah, I mean, of course, you're dead, you're not existent here anymore. It's beyond even the fear of what happens after you die. It's just like, that's it. And so these questions, the intensity of these questions, I think we can be used to fuel, first of all, to confront it, to see what I'm avoiding, to see where I can do a little more expansion and realize the capacity that I have to actually live to the fullest in joy and in sorrow, and to be prepared. And so the Death Cafe retreat has two aspects of it, right? There's a particular, like the embodiment part of it, right? How am I living in this body right now? Because you might be afraid of dying or going to some death retreat thing, but however, are you really living, or are you the walking dead? My friend Rose calls the people at the border, it's like, yeah, the walking dead. There's just like this constant suffering, and you're just walking around doing the thing, checking into work, paying the bills. Oh, another day. Oh my God, I can't wait till Friday and I can go get drunk with my friends, and then Monday's coming again. It's a really important question. And the younger and the quicker you get into there and begin to offer your heart into tending to this situation, then yes, there will be work to do, but that's how you become more alive. The first time I remember thinking about really planning for death was, I had seen so many people die, and the families coming in, like, I want her to go here, she wants to be in the hospital, that person wants to die at home, that person, and then the whole chaos that everybody got into because there's so much pain, and nobody's really practicing, 2 hours of meditation every day, so it's intense. All of your anxiety and all your unworked trauma and problems bubble up, and you dish it out to everybody. So a lot of what I would think was, when I die, we better have our shit together. And I remember thinking about this when my baby was little. She was probably like, Paula was maybe 6 months or 7 months old. The first time I had to travel away in this work thing that I don't know, I had to go to this training from work. It was a week away from her, and I literally was losing my mind, having to get on an airplane and going away. And what if I died on the airplane? And there she was now with a dead mother. And partner would laugh at me and think, what are you talking about? It's ridiculous. But I literally wrote this long letter to her in case I would die. And then I thought, nobody's gonna listen to the letter. We better get our shit together. So we met with a couple of lawyers, people that would do wills and testaments and all that. And I remember maybe, I don't even know how long it took, but it was quite simple. It seemed more complicated, but you basically decided, okay, Julio, what? So if I'm in a coma, you're in a coma, what do we want? Do we want to just be plugged into the machines forever? Or do we want to have a release? If there's nothing else to do and we're, 40, 50, 60 years old. Wait, if there's nothing else to do, there's nothing else to do. If you're still young and there's something to do, let's try to do it. But if you're 70, 80, or super sick, even at 50 or 90 years old, well, can we allow ourselves the natural way, which is dying? And it was intense to think about it. And then we said, yes, yes, we can. So I wrote that in there, like, don't be, I don't want to be kept alive with machines. I want to die at home. This is what I want for, and people to come to the funeral. This is what I want to happen. And, put, I don't know, your things in a trust if you have a house or whatever. And please take care of my kids, my parents or my sister or my brother-in-law, whatever. But had it all organized. And then, actually having the documents there and signing it was kind of a very satisfactory thing for me. I said, okay, I'm being a responsible person. And we were barely 30 years old. So that was it. That was done. And I put that in the back burner and never thought about it again for years. For years until my mom had a stroke and then she was sick. And then they had nothing in place. My mom or dad had nothing, like, they hadn't written what they wanted. They, we barely were able to find my mom's password somewhere to be able to get into her medical, emails to see what was up with the doctor and her medications or whatever, all the 50 million medications she was on before she moved to another insurance, and we got way more holistic and natural. And that was one of the things that helped me be able to talk to her, like, listen, Mom, this isn't looking very good. We're going to do whatever we can to make sure you heal and that we can have the best quality of life. But meanwhile, let's prepare. And she would say, well, no, nobody's dying here. No, we're not going to talk about that. I said, listen, I already have written out what I want. This is what I want. If I get sick and you're here, Mama, I don't want you to have me plugged into machines. I want to be in my home, peacefully with as much, assistance for palliative care. They can have, music and the therapy animals and psilocybin and, my friends coming over to do sound healing and just a peaceful at home allowance of nature. I don't want to have to be taken to the hospital every 2 weeks just because I'm, holding on, grasping onto something that's, that you can't really change anymore. That was in my paperwork. I showed her the paperwork and she's like, you did that paperwork? I said, yes, like 20 years ago. I just did it when I had kids. I just figured that this was something that was important in case I was gone. Who would take care of them? How I wanted to die. So it's like an advance, I forget what it's called now. The word left my head, but an advance directive. And so we got the paperwork, and that was the introduction for me to go in to tell my mom and my dad, because we did this too. This is what we do. And it's funny because I just did a post recently about my mom and remembering her and how sometimes she was the mom and then sometimes I was the mom and I was a daughter and she was a daughter. And a lot of us are in that situation, especially when parents are so young, you don't even know what the fuck you're doing. And you're not really even following your own intuition as a human. You're listening to the neighbor or the book or some expert instead of really listening to yourself. So part of connecting to yourself, part of my connecting to what I was doing in my life was going in and taking care of these documents. And that is one of the things that we're offering at the Death Cafe workshop retreat. There's going to be, you don't even have to pay a lawyer to do it. We have all the information. You can get a lawyer after if you want, for sure, if you want to do it. But these forms are available online. Everyone thinks you have to have an attorney. They make things easier and then it's done. But you can have an advance directive and you can have a will. This is what I want when I'm dead, and then this is what I want you to do or to help me to die when I'm in my last days, right? Hopefully when we're 100 years old and just did the last yoga class and ice bath and now you're ready to die. That would be ideal, but who knows if that's going to happen. But when you kind of take care of those things, number one, well, you're owning your power, because now nobody else can come in and tell you this or that, especially if you're, if you have a partner and not legally married, or if you have, your friends that might, maybe you don't have close family, and then people are going to come in, your long lost uncle Joe from whatever, and wanting to come in, and since they're the next of kin, they'll have more power at the hospital or wherever the fuck you are, instead of your dear best friend that you've been telling her, I want it to be like this, I want it to be like that. She'll be powerless. Unfortunately, that's how it rolls in this society. So if you want to have that in order, this is a great place to come and learn about how to have that in order. Advanced directives, having your will, working out a trust. What does that all even mean? It's simple, and you can have that done. On the other side, these decisions bring up a lot of awkwardness, and part of what we've been taught in this culture, in this society, in this time of whatever time on our earth, is that we don't talk about those things. Oh, I don't want to talk about it because then it's coming, and then I'm calling for it, and I don't want to deal with it, and I'll deal with that when I get there. And that's also not very helpful. I mean, before, I think maybe like 5 years before even my mom had her stroke, my dad was really sick at one point in the hospital with, they had to give him an operation because he was septic, because of something in his stomach, and it was like it was an emergency operation. And we were there advocating for him, because if you just leave someone in the hospital, first of all, you can't do that anymore. Okay? Your friend, your neighbor, your parent, someone's in the hospital, go hang out with them. Take turns. Get a little team in the village to go in and take, because you can't be there by yourself. They're overwhelmed with 50 million other patients and procedures and having to do things a specific way. So I was in there, we're advocating. I'm like, hey, listen, I think this isn't working out what you're doing here. Call the doctor, move him to cardiology, emergency operation, because he was, his body was getting all infected. And the doctor was like, you need to call your brother and sister, because I don't know what's going to happen. And also sign here, advanced directive, whether or not you want me to, keep him alive if he goes into coma. And I understood what he was talking about, because I'd been doing this for so many years, helping other people or with friends or whatever. But when I called my brother, I remember he was like, what the fuck is he doing? I'm not signing. Why is he asking me to sign that thing? And this is our reaction, because it's too painful. What do you mean you can't fix this? And sometimes you can't. So the death retreats, these death cafes, these are practices, tools, information, embodiments, just circle times to discuss and see how you feel about, these really, I suppose, like huge topics, and to intermingle this with our day-to-day life, to be having a greater capacity to be grateful, to take care of ourselves, to take care of our people, to realize that, well, shit, maybe I do need to go to therapy. You go to the gym, you go to get coffee. Why don't you go to somatic experience practitioner? Why don't you go calm your body down? Why don't you go to therapy? There's so much research now showing how our bodies are sick, mostly because we're not tending to emotional issues. And it's, it's maybe not a very simple text, but it's simple decision to go down and take that journey. It's a compassionate thing. Only when compassion is present can then we say, okay, this is a hard topic. I haven't really done this work. How am I going to figure this out? I'm going to have compassion for myself, versus this non-compassion, harsh, hustling, harshness, survivalism way that we've been taught and that we've been growing in, which really gives a way to avoidance. More drinking, more eating shit we don't need to eat, more fucking around with, buying more things, and, I have to create this and get that, otherwise I'm not going to be worth enough. So these expectations, right? These like hard expectations on ourselves are really, they get in the way. And so when really death retreats, death cafe, it's just such a beautiful way of just breaking all that bullshit, because you're straight up in there confronting it. I mean, when your mom dies, when a friend dies, when a young child dies, it's so not toxic. It just takes such a toll. It's so tolling. It takes such a toll on the body, and we don't allow ourselves to have the time. It could take 1, 2, 10 years of your body to be sad and just wrecked, and you're missing this person so much, especially a kid. Can you imagine? And society expects us to just fucking get over it. Oh, it's been a year, it's been 2 years, it's been 3 years. We don't have these village practices to gather and just light big fires and weep and cry and kick the earth and continue to bring meals to those that are grieving years after their loved one is gone. We do it for maybe a month, sometimes 2 months, but it's weaving back into our culture these wisdom ways, these wisdom knowings of how to be able to hold our bodies and ourselves in these villages in such terrible loss, and into this reality that we're here on this little journey. And it's easy, it's really practical. And the more you sit with these questions, I think it's not that it gets easier, it's just you're more accustomed to it, right? It's like the more you work out, the more you go to the gym, or the more you walk, then you expand your capacity to walk more. You're not, running out of breath after 2 blocks. All of a sudden you can walk down 3, 4 miles. You're doing these marathons or whatever, but you're expanding your capacity, you're getting in shape. So this death workshop, this death cafe retreat is to get in shape for death. To get in shape for death means that you're going to live fuller, potentially more sensational lives. That's right. And it's September 24th and 25th here in San Diego. It's not an overnight. You come in the morning and you go home at 6. We will feed you amazing food and have really good offerings and healthy drinks for you, and we're going to have circles and beautiful ceremony time as well. I asked my dad a little bit ago, we were driving to the Home Depot, and on the drive there from my house, you go through the cemetery, and there's all these tombs in the cemetery, which is, I think, another really weird thing. I don't want to be in a cemetery. We should have had our own land, hopefully have our own family cemeteries. But anyway, yeah, that's one of the things I trip about a lot, and I think we can also discuss that at the death retreat. But so I asked, my dad mentioned, he just commented, well, I'm close now. It's about pretty soon I'll be in the cemetery. He's 87. And I'm like, Dad, what are you talking about? You're probably going to end up burying me. You're in such good shape, It is brujo, pa que la juegas? He's such in good shape. And he's like, no. When I asked him, I said, are you scared of dying? And just very calmly, he's like, I am not. It's natural. And I'm assuming it's more of an easier way to think, or just a cognitive way of thinking when you're 87, like it's a natural thing. I'm going to die. Who knows when the time comes, if you struggle with it or not, or you're just tired enough where you're like, okay, let's go. Or if he spends a lot of time contemplating. I always tease him about going to mass and stuff and how stupid the Catholic religion is. However, his practice is deep. He sits there, and I'll go in to say hi, and I've caught him a couple of times just sitting there with his rosary, but just really contemplating. And he does it every day. And that's his spiritual practice of going in and following his breath. And it gives him so much peace. That dude is really chill. He has also, of course, a lot of life experience, but, his dog died last Thursday. Shotzi was my mom's dog, and it was a little miniature schnauzer. I'll put some pictures on there when I post this podcast of the funeral, because we had a funeral for her. She was about 15 years old. I got her as a little puppy when my mom had lost another dog, and she was just my mom's favorite. She was the most spoiled little schnauzer dog. And when my mom died, of course, Dad moved in with us, and we had to bring the dog, but Schatzi. Schatzi means sweetie, by the way, honey. And it's in German, these little German dogs. So my grandfather got one for us when we were like 3 or 4 years old. There's been about 4 or 5 Schatzis at the house. Every schnauzer we get gets the same name. I think this must have been Schatzi number 4. And she was sick, she was old. There was nothing but veterinarians can do. But Dad had been telling me for a while, I think she's ready to die. I think she's ready to die. And I said, well, I don't know. We got her this food and I gave her CBD so she would eat. She didn't want to eat anymore. And about 2 months into it, my son found her all curled up next to this tree in our backyard, and she had died. And my husband picked her up. Julio put her in. He's like, "Oh, suegro, I have to tell you, Shati passed away." And he called me and he's like, "I just had a ceremony back here. We put Shati with a bunch of flowers, and I lit some kapal, and your dad was just watching." And it was just so cool to be able to, even in a little dog, celebrate in the ceremony, right? We throw some incense because it's a loss. And it was the last little part of my mom that he had. And also, Shati slept in his bed and was always following him around. And it was the one thing that he still had to take care of. You know, has she eaten? He would have her appointments to go get her hair done, washed or whatever, and go to the vet. And every day they'd go for a walk, and she would get so excited to go for the walk. And maybe like 4 months ago, he got her a new collar, and he told me yesterday she was so proud of her new collar when they got the new collar. And I told her, "All right, Dad, well, I called the vets, the hospitals, and we're going to take her to cremation." He's like, "What? No, I don't want to cremate her. Let's just bury her in the backyard." I'm like, "Dad, what do you mean bury her in the backyard? There's like really hard soil there. We need to bury her. I want the earth to eat her. And plus cremation is really, really bad it's contamination." So I said, "All right, let's find a place to bury her, and we're gonna have a funeral." People, it was like, "Oh, who's gonna end up digging the hole? It's gonna be me." And I said, "Well, hold on, let me call my brother and my sister and let's see who can make it." But it was so freaking hot, and everybody was working. And so, long story short, we found this place, this beautiful yard, and my dad started digging and digging. And I have a little video of him just digging and digging. And then, of course, we took turns because it has to be a 3 to 4 deep hole, and that's not easy to dig, especially when it's 100-degree weather and you're 87 years old or 52 like me. But Hulu came in like always to save the day, and he helped us, and we placed Shati in the deep hole with all these flowers, and then my dad put the dirt on top of her, and at the end, Sarah sang a song, my sister showed up, and the wind was blowing and everybody was quiet. And there was Sarah with her beautiful song for grievers, When I rise in the morning. I should have her come sing it. We could play it on the podcast. I think of you inside my heart. That's not how the words go, but that's how it sounded. It was so freaking beautiful. We're all crying because every time you have a ceremony for a loss, other losses come up. And you get to process and alchemize those in your body as well. Which is why sometimes, when you have your friends come visit somebody who's sick and you're crying more than the sick person, you're like, "What the fuck, man? Go do your grieving somewhere else. You're here for the sick person." Because all of your losses come through. And so after, the whole funeral, my dad got up and he just looked at us and said, "Thank you so much for the funeral." It was this like sacrifice, of like 4 hours sweating, sweating as it was so hot, versus going down and just getting her cremated, because that's what you do. And so now we have that memory, and now we have that ritual, and we have that ceremony, and that's what he wants when he dies. My mom wanted to get cremated. He said, "No, no, no, I want to be buried." At a green burial or something like that. And I'm even considering now doing the green burial. Before I would say, "No, I want to get cremated." Then that's actually in my paperwork, because I was just, this fear of, I don't know, getting buried alive or some shit. I think I saw a movie when I was really young about, they buried this chick and she was actually alive. And so hopefully, I'm not going to be buried alive. But anyway, these documents that you make can be fluid and you can change them as you go. But at least you'll have them, and you won't leave this burden to your kids or your loved ones, because somebody else is going to be having to take care of you when you're over there in super sick or almost about to die and you can't say or do anything. And so it's important. It's important to be responsible for yourself, and it's important to do these practices and these rituals that are connecting us to earth, connecting us to the reality that we are made of the same elements of the earth. We are her children. That's the true mother. Everything else is an illusion. And so we are of these minerals and these, that's why you can go and get buried and get transformed into earth again, being the compost. And we don't want to touch that reality. We're over here thinking that we're going to be like the Jetsons and having this drink that'll never allow you to die or get sick, and that's just a bunch of crap that they sell you. You know how many bottles and vitamins and minerals and all this shit that they sell you so that you can stay younger longer. We want to stay stronger and alive and sentient as fuck longer. Quality, open hearts, compassion, a village to go grieve with. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening at the Death Cafe retreat. It's 2 days, 8 hours each day or something like that. You'll be held, you will be laugh. We'll also do some dancing and yoga. It's not all going to be, the depths of, we got to bring it back up, go down, bring it back up with a lot of compassion. So the registration is open, and you can go on grisalves.com/events or DM me or Sarah Knapp at Grief is a River on Instagram for any questions that you have. And we hope to see you there soon. Thank you for listening, for watching this video or listening, whatever you're doing. And we'll see you next time. Tales of Recovery.